So, Kate, for firms handling high monthly completion volumes, where do avoidable requisitions most often become operational problems, and what practical changes make the biggest difference to you?
Yeah, so I think from our point of view, when we were first given the data about the avoidable requisitions, I think one of the main ones, which was quite horrifying, that actually came up was ticking the joint tenants in common box, and that was like 2% of our avoidable requisition rates. We just thought, like, how why is this happening? And when we actually broke it down, it was when the transfers were coming in from the seller's representative, the box wasn't ticked and that was going in, and people were just forgetting to do it. So I think, we just then created a simple checklist for handover between the conveyancing team and the post-completion team, to actually make sure that everything is ticked and is in the right place before anything actually gets lodged. Um, so really, it was just a bit of a review of our processes, because we found a lot of the avoidable requisitions were from the handover time. So I think the conveyancing teams, they're in a rush to do the completion, done the completion, great. They then pass it on to post completion to then deal with, and it's out of their hair. And I think that was where we were finding most of the issues were coming from. So I think then we put more emphasis on the conveyancers to just double check everything before it goes in, and even just simple things like making notes if there's something quirky on there that needs to be looked at before it goes in. It's just admin simple, easy things, but just by doing that, so as I said before, our avoidable requisition rate was 7.17 in October, and our goal was actually to reduce it by 2%, and we've actually gone down to, I think it's 3.79 was our last one. So it's actually massively helped just by tweaking a couple of processes here and there. So
Just going back to you, Roger, if I can, is there like an average percentage you would want the average firm to meet?
I don't think that's fair, because I don't think anyone will ever get to a situation where these will not happen. So I think that we would obviously love it to be a zero-sum game. It would be great for everybody involved in the industry. It would be lovely for land registry as well. But I think we've got to realise that, as you say, sometimes, Kate, somebody's not going to tick the right box. What we're really looking at is what is something that happens more frequently in your organisation that perhaps hasn't been talked about or hasn't been engaged with. But in terms of the overall percentage, the lower the percentage, the better for everyone, better for the speed and the accuracy that everyone's getting through the entire process, that leads to a better register. I would say that the key thing is that I wouldn't focus on the percentage. I think the percentage there, Kate's a lovely sort of
love
way
the
to sort of
percentage.
look at your point and go, yay, look at what we've done. But it's really, I think, that the data that we're trying to give you, which says, look at this area and see if there's something that you can do. We put a lot of flow charts into the training hub to try and help people streamline processes. And I'm sure that, both in terms of what we can do with technology, but also with companies that, Adil represents, there is an opportunity in those type of companies to help with that as well. But from my point of view, Robert, I don't think we should focus on exactly what the percentage is, because I think that's perhaps a false area to look at. What I think it's about is the granularity of the data. If I start sounding like a marketeer, which I am, but it's this, we're giving lots and lots of people very specific data about their actions and how they can change them. And Kate's the perfect example of somebody who's taken that role on board. I know it's great you said you wanted a 2% reduction, but actually you can just look at the better services, the better processes, and the better outcome, which is not only great for you, but it's also great for the clients that are employing you as their conveyancer.
I mean, I know you say not to focus on the percentages, but I think from our point of view, it's kind of the only thing that we've got to see that there's been an improvement, because obviously we can do all the training, we can put all the processes and procedures in place, but unless we've got the data, then we don't know if it's working or not. So I think for us, just to see that improvement, all right, we're never going to get to zero, I know that, but to be honest, I'm quite happy now with our percentage as it is, and and also a lot of people are looking at this data. I know regulators are looking at it, and lenders are probably looking at it, and so actually, I think there's more emphasis on it than you probably realise. And I think for bigger firms, it's the only thing that we've got because we can't see it. Whereas you can see the data and the percentages, and that's all we can go on at the minute.
Yeah,
I'm,
as I say,
I,
your email that you get though is very, very broken down, and I totally realise that perhaps at the higher level, it's very clear. I would say though, one of the things, the reason that the industry particularly likes this is we did since 2018 put out a requisition figure, and I think when you look at that figure, that was the top line, that was every possible requisition, and for some firms who do perhaps new builds where it's more challenging in the requisition space, or you're doing first registrations again where we are likely to come back with more questions, it perhaps didn't present the most transparent or fairest look at this. But what's great about these requisition points we're looking at is they are identical across every firm, and they are more the ones that you have to do, which is the name right, is the witnesses right. That doesn't matter whether it's a first registration or just a change of a remortgage. We're looking at those ones, and therefore, if we can get that focus and that attention to detail, I hope, Kate, that within your organization there's a feeling that there's a cultural change, which is actually taking that attention to detail is proving to be useful, and I'm kind of hoping it's spreading across all of the points that you look at rather than just the ones that are in the avoidable requisition data set.
Yeah, definitely. But it's great to go back to the teams and say, look, this is what you've done over the last 6 months, and it's just nice for them to, because again, they don't know, they're putting in the AP ones and stuff, but it's just nice for them to see an improvement as well.
Yeah, well, so
I'm glad you mentioned the outside bodies that are looking at this information. Kate, that gives me a reason to plug the Bold Legal Group conference in 10 days' time, although we are sold out. We will be exploring this subject again, and we will have a lender on the panel. The Nationwide are going to join us and go into that particular topic in a bit more detail. So thanks for that. Adele, Louise, do you want to comment on anything that's been said in this second question?
Go ahead, Louise.
Yes, there's quite a bit I think that we'll talk about sort of in the next session, but definitely, like Kate, as you call out about, we talk a lot about post-completion problems actually being pre-completion problems. And obviously, if you've got a dedicated post-completion team, they are probably doing everything that they can to get those applications in as quickly and accurately as possible, as is their, job and what they're being told to do. So we need to make sure that anything that's getting done sort of further upstream has like a positive impact on post-completion, and they're given the right they're set up to succeed, basically. Like, how can we ensure that the whole process from onboarding to post-completion is all connected up, and you're not having, I guess, like holes in your bucket, basically, for like incorrect information to flow through.
Yeah, I think it was really interesting hearing from Kate actually in that specific example, because it's obviously, you've got smaller conveyancing firms where, they might not have a dedicated post-completion team, but for larger firms, just because there is a post-completion team doesn't necessarily mean everything's in order. Really small process issues can be magnified, and the example you gave is just such a good example that, you found this one little thing, and your requisition rate has gone down by 2%, maybe not entirely just because of that one thing, but it's made a meaningful difference. And I think that's where we also see with some of our larger customers is where they may or may not have a process manual. If they don't have a process manual, then you should put one in place to capture everything. And if there is one, there's still issues that can arise. But yeah, that was a really, really great example.
Okay, thanks, Adele. So finally, Kate, then, what would you recommend, without repeating yourself, firms review first if their own data shows recurring avoidable requisition? Where should they start?
I think you need to look at the data as to what the requisition is, because I think that's what we do. As Roger said, it is broken down for us, and then you need to work on your processes then to find out why that keeps happening. Is it one person that needs extra training, or is it a team? Is it the conveyancer? And that's exactly what we did. And then you can pinpoint where the problem is to deal with it. So, that is, I find it's not the actual requisitions it's a little bit of everything. So there's lots of things to change rather than it just being one big problem. So you just need to identify what one that is.